Now, even though I had such a profound experience, I still spent the next 8 weeks rebuilding my gut. Now, there were ups and downs as I experimented with what worked and what didn't, especially with HCl, because at the time I didn't have the guide that I shared with you today. Much of what I did, including the dietary changes and the supplements, I had to sort of piece together from many different sources. Betaine hydrochloride is a nutritional amino acid extracted from food sources such as grains, beets, spinach, beef, shrimp, whole wheat foods. It was originally found in beets, which is where the name came from. It is called hydrochloride because the betaine hydrochloride is the hydrochloride salt of the betaine. Now, this acidic version of betaine works in the same way as the body's own hydrochloric acid, also known as HCl, and can serve as a supplementary source in your stomach to lower pH and assist with digestion. This, as stomach acid should normally be in the range of 1.5 to 3. Now, betaine hydrochloride is recommended by some doctors as a supplemental source of hydrochloric acid for people who have a deficiency of stomach acid production, known as hypochlorhydria or low stomach acid. Now, when low stomach acid is present, the body is unable to absorb vitamins and minerals, break down proteins, and kill bacteria and viruses that enter the stomach orally. And as we've covered before, many acid reflux sufferers intuitively, albeit incorrectly, believe they have high stomach acid. This idea is even sometimes reinforced by well-intentioned yet misinformed medical providers. Now, there are a few diagnostics that can help you determine empirically if you have low stomach acid, including the Heidelberg test and the serum gastric test. Unfortunately, however, both diagnostics are seldom prescribed. Not every reflux sufferer has low stomach acid, but in episode 2, I cover 6 reasons why you may have low stomach acid. However, there are many others, such as vitamin deficiencies that we'll cover later, aging, and the reduction of short-chain fatty acids, which could be driven by microbial imbalances of the gut. Now, quite often, insufficient stomach acid production is paired with insufficient pepsin production, causing the body to struggle to digest food. Now, this is why you may want to ensure that the betaine variety that you pick up includes pepsins to help break down some of those proteins into smaller, more easily digested substances. So, looking at a case study published by the U.S. National Library of Medicine, we learned that the onset of betaine hydrochloride is rapid, quickly prompting a temporary reacidification of the stomach, lasting about an hour, plus or minus 30 minutes. Now, the study looked at people who are pharmacologically achlorhydric, which means that their acid reflux medications were doing what they were designed to do and rendering their resting gastric pH in the 5 to 7 pH range, which is slightly to non-acidic. This in contrast to a normal pH range, which is in the 1 to 3 range. Now, in the study, betaine safely reduced gastric pH from above 5 to a pH of 1 for about an hour. Now, I'll link a second case study in the show notes. It follows a patient with irritable bowel syndrome and how they effectively use betaine hydrochloride to reacidify and address reflux medication-induced hypochlorhydria, also known as low stomach acid. So before we get too far into the subject, who shouldn't take betaine hydrochloride? For one, people who have certain allergies. So for instance, the brand that I use doesn't contain yeast, eggs, gluten, soy, wheat, sugar, starch, salt, preservatives, fragrance, artificial colors, artificial flavors. Individuals with inflammatory conditions such as ulcers, gastritis, or esophagitis, or that take medications that increase risk factors for these conditions. The safety and efficacy of betaine hydrochloride supplements have not been clinically evaluated for children or those that are pregnant or breastfeeding women. HCl can also irritate sensitive tissue and can be corrosive to teeth. Therefore, capsules should not be emptied into food or dissolved into beverages. Similar consideration for those who have trouble swallowing pills, as it could become lodged in the soft tissues of the throat. Now, it's important that HCl is taken with a meal of sufficient size, something like 500 calories or more, containing adequate protein. Now, betaine should also not be taken on an empty stomach unless it is followed immediately by consuming a meal. Even so, I find that taking it a few minutes into the meal gives you the best results, and we'll cover why shortly. Now, what are some of the potential side effects? Potential side effects include diarrhea, nausea, body odor, or reflux sensations such as stomach discomfort. Betaine hydrochloride does not increase stomach acid to a level beyond what is normal for the stomach. As such, if there's any sort of burning sensation, it may be an indication of a compromised stomach or mucosal lining. Warning labels on the supplements themselves indicate that if a burning sensation is experienced, you should discontinue use or use less frequently. This, as continued use, could further degrade the mucosal lining of the stomach. Now, betaine actually has a pretty interesting history. It used to be included in over-the-counter medicines that helped with digestion. However, in 1988, the FDA added Section 310.540, which stipulates that it cannot be classified as a drug. and I quote, because the lack of adequate data to establish the effectiveness of these or other ingredients for use in treating achlorhydria and hyperchlorhydria, and because of conditions such as asymptomatic or over-the-counter drug product containing ingredients offered for use as stomach acidifier cannot be considered generally recognized as safe and effective. Now, I want you to keep in mind that the FDA has declared achlorhydria, or no stomach acid, and hyperchlorhydria, or low stomach acid, as asymptomatic, meaning that there are no symptoms associated with these conditions. And we'll come back to this in a second. Nevertheless, given the FDA regulation, betaine supplements now may only be labeled as dietary supplements and are unregulated by the FDA. Now I want to read to you a quote from WebMD. Promoters still claim that some health conditions are due to inadequate stomach acid, but this claim has not been proven to be true. Even if it were true, betaine hydrochloride wouldn't help. It only delivers hydrochloric acid, but it does not itself alter stomach acidity. However, this directly contradicts my experience, recommendations from holistic, naturopathic, functional medicine providers, and even the user reviews on WebMD's own website, which are overwhelmingly positive. So I will link in the show notes if you want to check out those reviews for yourself. Now, what are some of the benefits of betaine hydrochloride? The supplement supports digestion. It helps to support healthy gut function and safely restore normal gastric acidity. More importantly, acidity along with increased intra-abdominal pressure are the triggers for your body to signal the close of your lower esophageal sphincter and prevent the backflow of stomach contents into the throat. Additionally, acidity is required to signal the pyloric sphincter and to efficiently and effectively release stomach contents into the small intestines. Lastly, achieving optimal stomach acidity helps your body to rebalance the microbiome, as beneficial microbes thrive in the naturally high acidity found in the gut, whereas non-beneficial microbes are allowed to flourish in the presence of insufficient acidity. These factors are often the key to enable you to stop taking your prescription or over-the-counter reflux medications and antacids. This, as acid reflux medications compromise your stomach's acidity, which many times is a contributing factor to the issues that I just mentioned. Let me read to you a quote from the medical journal published in the National Institutes of Health. Generally, a fasting gastric pH less than 3 is considered normal, while values above 3 are considered to be gradually more hyperchlorhydric. True achlorhydria results in a gastric pH above 7, which is characterized by very limited acid production, even when stimulated by gastrin or histamine. Subjects taking proton pump inhibitors will generally have a fasting pH between 5 and 7. Now the article continues, inadequate levels of stomach acid, regardless of the root cause, can result in many nutritional and digestive issues. For instance, a reduction in gastric acid secretion prevents adequate denaturing of folded proteins. Activation of pepsin is greatest at pH 2 or less, and its protease activity is optimal at a pH range of 1.8 to 1.2. Now, a low acid environment is linked to reduction and absorption of key micronutrients such as calcium, iron, folic acid, vitamin B6, and vitamin B12. Also, since gastric acid helps to eliminate harmful ingested microorganisms and hinders bacterial overgrowth in the stomach and small bowel, low stomach acid can increase the risk for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, and specific microbial overgrowth of organisms like Clostridium difficile, or C. diff. While most of these consequences of low stomach acid are undisputed, there is much less agreement on the prevalence of this condition in the general population, how to test for such a condition, and especially whether there is an appropriate therapy for low stomach acid. So how do you take betaine hydrochloride? Now people often ask me, I don't feel any sort of discomfort when I take betaine hydrochloride, so how do I know when I'm taking it correctly? Well, what we'll do here is we'll walk through some steps published in the National Institutes of Health that give you a number of additional things that you could be looking for. Now, this protocol involves giving patients increasing doses of betaine hydrochloride at mealtimes until such time that a noticeable discomfort is reported. Patients who have exceeded the necessary dose will experience tingling, heartburn, diarrhea, or any type of discomfort, including feeling of unease, digestive discomfort, neck ache, backache, headache, or any other new odd symptom. Upon experiencing tingling or burning or any uncomfortable symptom, patients can optionally neutralize the acid with 1 teaspoon of baking soda in water or milk. So this article provides additional sensations to be on the lookout for, including tingling, heartburn, diarrhea, unease, digestive discomfort, neck ache, back ache, headache, or any other new odd symptom or discomfort. Now let's move on to the steps and how it is recommended to take betaine hydrochloride. Number 1, patients with suspected mealtime hyperchlorhydria should begin taking 1 capsule containing 350 to 750 milligrams of betaine hydrochloride with protein-containing meals. Capsules containing betaine hydrochloride with added pepsin can also be used for superior overall benefit. Number 2. If no discomfort or burning sensation is noted, the patient can begin taking 2 capsules with each protein-containing meal. Number 3. If a burning sensation or any discomfort is noted after taking this or any dose, the patient can neutralize the acid with a teaspoon of baking soda and water or milk, and then reduce the dose of betaine hydrochloride to a previously tolerated dose at a subsequent meal or discontinue the protocol. Number 4. Now, if there are no noticeable reactions to the betaine hydrochloride after 2 days, patients should increase the number of capsules with each meal to 3. Number 5. Continue increasing the number of capsules every 2 days for a maximum of 3,000 milligrams of betaine hydrochloride with each meal if necessary until the dose results in tingling, burning, or any other type of discomfort. At such point, the patient should decrease the dose by 1 capsule per meal. If the discomfort continues, they should be instructed to continue the betaine hydrochloride supplementation and consult with their healthcare professional. Number 6. Once the dose is established, continue at this dose for subsequent meals. Number 7. With smaller meals, less betaine hydrochloride is needed, so a reduced dose may be adequate. Number 8. Individuals with very moderate hydrochloride deficiency generally show a rapid improvement in symptoms and have early signs of intolerance to the acid. This typically indicates a return to normal acid secretion. This is an additional indication to decrease the dose by 1 capsule per meal. Now I want to add to this some of my learnings from taking betaine hydrochloride. First, it is suboptimal to take hydrochloride with reflux medications. I'm going to link a study in the show notes that shows that while taking PPIs, hydrochloride will take up to 3 times as long to reacidify the stomach, which will delay digestion and lead to other acid reflux related issues. Next, it is best to not take betaine on an empty stomach or before meals. Instead, to take them in the middle of meals. The prior article further explained that taking it something like 10 minutes into the meal reduces the chances of delayed reacidification. Additionally, my own experience is just taking it before meals can be uncomfortable and provide a false negative. Third, a common pitfall is people find or decide to use HCl with no pepsins, thinking that pepsins are bad. As we've covered in some of the prior episodes, and to some extent in this episode, pepsins are a key part of digestion, and they're often in low supply when your stomach acid is in low supply and your stomach acidity is compromised. Fourth, taking a combination of HCl with a digestive enzyme or some other supplement does not allow for the HCl to be varied as necessary, and as we've discussed in these 8 steps. Also, betaine as sort of an added benefit to some other supplement usually does not provide the recommended dosage. Fifth, some people never really feel the discomfort and they continue to up their dose, hoping that they will at some point. Taking too much, of course, can be unsafe, so hopefully some of the additional recommendations from the article that I've linked below can give you some other things to be on the lookout for, to know that you should be reducing your dose as opposed to increasing it further. In number 6, the same dose doesn't work for every meal. It definitely needs to be varied, as the article covered, according to the complexity of meals. And we'll get into that more as we answer some more of your questions. Another question, how long can someone stay on betaine hydrochloride? It is a really good question for your doctor, I would say, because aside from the warnings I noted prior, I've not been able to locate any reason why an individual could not stay on betaine hydrochloride for an extended period of time. However, the goal is to use it in the short term to help accelerate healing and ultimately to get off it and all of the supplements. Another question, can you heal without betaine or with less betaine? That's not something that I have personal experience with. However, I do believe it is possible. If I were faced with not being able to take hydrochloride as a part of my healing regime, and some people who have inflammatory conditions would fall into this situation, I would focus on anti-inflammatory actions that I could take, such as high fiber daily, avoiding sugar and fatty foods, taking a probiotic, avoiding triggers. And after doing this for a while, I began weaning my dose of reflux medication down. Hopefully over time, this will reduce the inflammation and maybe allow you to introduce betaine, or maybe on its own, it will get you to where you need to be. This will, of course, be a slower process, but based on my understanding of the underlying issues, I would expect it could be successful. So another question I got from you all, and actually one that I get quite often, was what was your personal experience with HCl? And I've broken this down into a few individual questions, such as how do you feel with hydrochloride as opposed to taking the PPI? For me, the effects of the dietary changes and the 3 supplements that I took, including HCl, were immediate and profound. I took them one night for dinner, and I woke up the next morning feeling better than I had in 15 years. For the first time, I didn't wake up with a mouthful of stomach contents. I felt that my throat was closed. In fact, the effects were so profound that I called in a vacation day and I started the acidrefluxguy.com. After suffering so long with no help, I just knew that I had to get this information out to as many people as possible. Now, I suspect that my results were so immediate because of my unique microbial imbalance. The HCl likely helped to kill off bacteria that were disrupting interactions between my microbiome and my enteric nervous system. And as a result, the digestive function, such as opening and closing of the lower esophageal sphincter, was improved. That, coupled with low acidity, did not allow for the proper signals to result in sufficient closing pressure. Now, not everybody has such an immediate experience, though. For some, rebalancing and rebuilding the key microbial species can take some time. Now, even though I had such a profound experience, I still spent the next 8 weeks rebuilding my gut. Now, there were ups and downs as I experimented with what worked and what didn't, especially with HCl, because at the time I didn't have the guide that I shared with you today. Much of what I did, including the dietary changes and the supplements, I had to sort of piece together from many different sources. Now, finding your personal dose is a continual process, as you'll be adjusting your dose as necessary from the very first time you take it until you are down to your very last pill. Now, as the article that I shared covered, when you experience discomfort, it is a cue to reduce that dose by 1 capsule. The dose will also vary according to the size and complexity of the individual meals. For example, I often took 2 to 3 with dinner, or 4 to 5 with a high protein meal, and 1 to 2 for lunch, or 0 to 1 with breakfast. Over time, by paying very close attention to the signals in your body, you'll begin to gain a sense for the right dose. Now, many times I didn't feel the discomfort with HCl either, so I didn't always have that as a guide. As such, I periodically experimented with taking less or taking more. And when I did that, I saw a noticeable difference in my symptoms for when I took it and when I didn't. So, for instance, my nose would run when I didn't take enough, or experience mild regurgitation, or a clearing of my throat off and on, depending on what I ate. So when I first started the acidrefluxguy.com, I wrote many articles sharing some of my personal experiences with dietary changes and the supplements that I found. After many months, however, I decided to remove the references to the supplements from those articles. I did that because people were looking for a quick fix, and they were buying them and trying the supplements, ignoring everything else that I said. Invariably, they ran into trouble because the approach they were using was not comprehensive and not methodical enough to help them through some of the stages of recovery. Now, I've since moved everything over to my resources page, as in order to find it, it requires people to read more and hopefully understand more before buying. And as I've said many times, if you can't explain how something helps to address the underlying causes of reflux, you should be really hesitant to put it into your body. Now, all that being said, you can find links to the specific brands of hydrochloride that I used. More importantly, this page references a number of resources that can help put HCl in context with the overall plan that can hopefully get you to healing. Specifically, my transition guide, which provides a checklist of steps that I use to resolve my reflux, and my book, which goes into more detail on the underlying causes of reflux and provides additional detail behind each of the steps in the checklist. To get it, you can go to my resources page at theacidrefluxguy.com/resources, or go to the link in the show notes below. As always, I linked all the references to medical journals and research in the show notes, so you can get to that by going to theacidrefluxguy.com/005. Now, my name is Don Daniels, also known as the Acid Reflux Guy, and this was another episode of The Reflux Cycle. Signing off.